Ready. Okay, chapter 7. Chapter 7 is a sort of lumped together, what do honeybees do for us as far as services and the products that we get from honeybees. A lot of people are interested in a more global view of what do honeybees do for us. And it really is helpful as you're talking to people who know that you're a beekeeper and they say, well, what about? And they think because you're a beekeeper, you know everything there is to know about pollination, about all kinds of flying insects, whether they're honeybees or not, and the importance of food production. So just will give you a little bit of information that will help cover some of that. Pollination is actually the largest economic part of beekeeping in the United States. It's over honey production and selling of honey products. The service of the honeybee and commercial beekeepers to pollinate crops is amazing. Taking bees to the almond orchards basically is a $1 billion operation for the commercial beekeepers. The 80% of the world's flowering plants require pollination in order to reproduce. And honeybees are one of the best pollinators for many crops, not all of them, but many of them. The pollinating in the almond orchards in California is where almost all commercial beekeepers make their most money of the year, and it's a 2-week period of time, which is why you hear about all the commercial bees coming from almond orchard, California, which is where we all get our packaged bees and most because of the economic benefit for having your bees there. Here in Washington State, we're in what's called Agricultural Region 5 on this state. The pollination of all crops in Region 5, and the latest figure I was able to get was in 2019, is $16.7 million. This is Washington, and it's an increase over the year before of 14%. So you can see what I mean by the benefit of pollination. The farmer that is growing the crop contracts a year or two ahead for a certain number of hives to come to their property based on the number of acres they have planted in, for example, apples. And it takes less than 2 weeks usually to do the pollination. So if you think about, the value of honeybee pollinators to commercial agriculture, you can understand why commercial agriculture wants to work with apiarists to make sure that they protect the pollinator as well as their apple crop. The benefits of pollination for a home person. Here's a strawberry. We all want the one on the left. If you don't have good pollination, you get the one in the middle or the one on the right. So not only does pollination affect the fact that you get a strawberry, that the flower is pollinated, but how well it is pollinated affects the size of the fruit. Raspberries is true for apples, is true for everything that gets pollinated. It has to be well pollinated. So for agriculture, crop production, crop yield, and crop quality. are really, really important. So don't think about it as just making the fruit. They have to be well pollinated to make good fruit. Other services, products, obviously honey. Everybody thinks about honey and its value. How many of you are thinking that you might want to get into selling your honey? I didn't ask that question. You maybe, Lee? Okay. Okay, Megan and Isaiah, I thought you were thinking of that. So good luck this year, but the selling of your honey is an art in and of itself. There's a lot of handling that you need to think about. We go into that more in Journeyman, but there's some in this as well, talking about how to market it. You need to follow certain guidelines as far as labeling. And there's a couple really good sources, I think, that are in your manual that talk about how to specifically do some of those things. It's not, so commercials can be anywhere from going to a farmer's market, selling to friends and neighbors, or actually if you want to get into what's called a sideliner business, you are actually having probably about 50 plus hives, and you really are going to have barrels of honey. And you're either going to bottle them or you're going to sell them to a commercial entity that buys barrels of honey. We actually, we have a couple of people in our group that enjoy bottling their honey and making their personal labels for it. And they found outlets at feed stores. The Mason Jar and Cheney has a couple of local ones. So it's interesting to see who is sort of attuned to this, and your options for finding outlets to sell your honey actually are pretty good. There's a lot of interest in especially local honey because of the effects on allergies. So people are really interested in getting their own from their own area and not buying it from the store. Think about all the laws and regulations that are necessary for the quality and determining and labeling. If you really are starting to sell this commercially, there's some transportation issues. There's going to be a lot that you'll want, a lot of detailed information. So before you take your first steps into it, start looking into what you're really going to need to do. And like I said, that Journeyman manual, that's your next step, really has a lot of detailed information on how to do these things. Really encourage you not to, when you scrape off your burr comb, save it, put it into a container out by your hives, or bring it with your gear, go out to your hives. Melting that down and making little bricks out of it, there's definitely an outlet and a market for those. And that nice fresh burr comb is just gorgeous white stuff, and people pay prime dollar for that. You can get individuals purchasing it to make candles and bee balms of their own, or if it's something that you want to get into and selling that as well. We have several people in West Plains Beavers that do balms and candles, and they just find it interesting and enjoyable. So that's something else besides honey to be thinking about. So there are a lot of products out there that you can take from your bees. I think I mentioned last time that it goes from, well, the most extreme out there goes from honey, which what you always think about is the royal jelly and the harvesting of that. And I don't know, that one I'm having trouble wrapping my head around. How much royal jelly do you harvest out of how many hives to make it even feasible, but it is feasible. People do it. So if you're thinking about getting into this, please, that is great. And don't hesitate. Just be very aware of what you're stepping into from the food handling point of view. We don't have as much regulation on honey as on most food products. So that's one thing, but there are different inspectors out there, and we have heard from our commercial beekeepers that depending upon who inspects them, they get very different answers. So just be aware of that, do your research well and right. And if you aren't interested in taking the journeyman class, you can purchase the journeyman manual too, which gives you a lot of clues about where to get more information if you're serious about this part of it. So any questions about honey and other products and what honeybees do as far as economics? I mean, I think you're all very aware of the fact that the food supply issue is one of the major things that people think about when they think about honeybees, the pollination services that they provide. And the takeaway that I'd like to have you remember from this is it's not just the pollination, but it's the quality of the pollination that affects the product size and shape. Any questions about this one?
None on chat, none on chat.
Okay. Hey, quiet group today, other than pesticides or other than diseases of pests. Okay, Mary, I turn it back to you.